Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our webinar today, File Cleanup and Management, How to Light Up Dark Data and Declutter Your File Shares. My name is Raphael, and I'm a Solutions Consultant here at ZL Tech. I'll be joined by Kevin, our Solutions Architect, and together we're going to share a strategic approach for cleaning up file shares, locking down personal data, defensively deleting raw data, and classifying and retaining records for long-term governance. To get started, let's talk about the shared files problem. The shared files problem, we all know, is again, high growth, very uncontrolled. That translates into escalating costs and administration. And when we talk to people, oftentimes the complaints we hear is, we don't even know what's in there. And even if we did know what's in there, we can't even find it. It causes a lot of issues that can turn into no governance, which can snowball into compliance, litigation, e-discovery, and even privacy issues. Now, what do we do about that? The typical response has been to perform a cleanup process, again, ad hoc, and then repeat that over and over again. But therein lies the problem. We can visualize this as a large pile of books and documents. Some call it the corporate dumping ground. And to fix this problem, you start the cleanup project and catalog and curate along the way. But before you finish cleaning up, the next pile comes in. You try it again and again, and basically it's a completely unsustainable process. So there has to be a better way, right, to do this? And there is a more systemic approach that you would need to take. What we need is a new type of system. So let's go over that. To start with our files management framework, we need to figure out all the different sources. Again, whether they're SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, Google Drive, regardless of where the files are, you need to begin the process of analysis. Again, the first step is a metadata analysis. So that's where we scan all of the files and folders for the metadata. So this includes things like file type, so where the data was created, access, modified, etc. Gives us a sense of what we're working with. The second step is content analysis. Here, we're digging into the actual content of the document, which is crucial because it will ultimately allow us to perform searches, classify records, identify PII, and a lot more. The next step is the classification stage. And this is where we take insight from the first two steps and actually start classifying documents either as records or PII based on all of that metadata and content we've pulled. Finally, we have the remediation stage, and this is where we apply in-place retention policies, defensible deletion, and selective archiving if needed, along with a lot of other actions. To get a better breakdown of how we go about that process, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
To start up on kind of a high level here, on the initial stage analysis that we like to do with our FAM product, let's talk about what we can do first in terms of just metadata problem. So here's a landing page for a particular project in our platform. We define projects as essentially any single location that we've pointed the solution at to crawl. So that could be an entire file share, a SharePoint site, or it could be a subset of file share. You could point it more down the further along in the file tree to focus on particular folders within there. But the example here is just a file share where we've crawled. So we've got 146,000 files, almost 21,000 folders, 17 gigs. So nothing crazy here, but it's enough to get some insights into what's going on. So first and foremost, I want to draw your attention to the fact that we've just replicated the file tree here on the left-hand side. So I can drop this down and see all the nested folders and get an initial breakdown, an idea of where my files are actually residing within this structure. So next to each one, we'll see some percentages. And so we got some statistics about where everything's actually sitting in here, and we can start to see kind of identify spaces where we might have problems or a heavy focus in our files distribution. Beyond that high level, just file share that we can look at, and also we can navigate through that to view a subset of any of this data. We have these visualizations here. So this first one is just a basic date histogram. But if I can draw your attention to the upper right of the box I have highlighted here, we have you can organize this by created date, the last modified date, or last accessed. And flipping through these can give you a decent idea of how much your file share or any subset within your file share of any of these different folders are actually being used. So if you find a heavy distribution of things that haven't been accessed in years or modified in years, it can kind of give you an idea that maybe some parts of this file share are not being used effectively. Maybe we're wasting space, maybe we're wasting money, and we need to start looking at identifying some redundant, obsolete, and trivial data here and seeing what we can do about cleaning it up. So beyond just our little date histogram here, we can get into slightly more advanced pie charts. And I should mention that all of these visualizations are fully interactive. So I can click on any subset within here, whether it be any of those dates within my date histogram. All of those little bars are clickable. I can look right into the files in any of those subsets. The same goes for these pie charts. So some of the ways we break down data here are in terms of file type. And what we're doing with that is auto-categorizing basically over 3,000 file extensions into some easier to understand basic categories like images, audio, movies, office files, things like that. So this can give you a bit of an idea of the content of your file share. If you see that it's full of images and you were thinking it should mostly be things like Word documents or Excel documents, it can kind of give you an idea that maybe this file share has been filled up over time with things that shouldn't be there and we need to do some cleanup. Beyond that, we can look at record categories. These record categories could be are fully integrated with the FAM product, so we can assign retention, track the retention of how all of the files here have been categorized, and track when they're going to be eligible to actually be purged in the end. We can look at size categories. This is going to give us an idea of the breakdown of how large all of these different files within whatever we're looking at are. So if you see here that we have a bunch of gigantic categorized files that are in the over 1 gig in size, that can kind of give you some idea of, okay, I thought this was going to be basically a normal file share of just work documents. So it's kind of strange that we have all these huge things. Maybe we can do some pretty easy cleanup and make a big dent by getting rid of some of these larger things that we don't need here. And then lastly, we have file type versus size, which is basically combining these two leftmost pie charts by giving us a visual representation rather than just a numerical one on how the amount of size taken up by the different file type categories that we've broken down before. So between these, you can get kind of a simple understanding of what this file share is composed of and how much it's being used. If I click on any of these subsets, I can look right at this, right into the actual items here. So for this one, for instance, I'm clicking on the large category. If I wanted to find things that were over a gigabyte or anything like that, I could click on the gigantic category, start doing some basic analysis of the path of where these are all at, see if they haven't been accessed in a long time. And then I know pretty quickly and easily that we can get rid of a lot of data, clear that up from this location. It's not being used and it's wasting a lot of space. So for only 2 or 3 clicks in, you're already finding large files that maybe you don't need anymore without having done much analysis at all yet. Beyond that kind of high level visualization and analysis that we provide just through metadata, we can also do searching to get hone in on deeper subsets than just types or categories and the like. So we have some kind of canned views that we like to provide here. These are standard reports, things like quarter, year, breakdown by size, file type, like we talked about before, breakdown by tags, which we can get what we will be into in just a minute here. And then we can actually go further and use saved searches for anything that might be more of a specific use case than just your organization. So to save a search within this, I'm going to look at my, beyond the filtering, look at my actual just file search. And here's where things get a lot more sophisticated and where we've brought over a lot of the same search functionality and tools that we have developed in over 2 decades of experience doing e-discovery that we've brought into our new in-place file analytics here. So things we can search in the content, we can get into tags, all the dates, we could look into access control lists, we could look at file ownership, we could look at any number of things about these files. Basically all the metadata and content is searchable. So with this, we can save these searches, or we can do one-off searches just if we want to apply a tag to some subset maybe. But we could save this for future filtering, so we can just have this always available to us. If maybe there's some specific use case we have where we want to be able to focus on maybe a particular department's files that is potentially concerning or needs more oversight within the file share. All of this can be saved and then filtered on later on. So here's just one example of a search that I've done. This is just looking for any files with the word ZL in the name of the file. Very simple. But what we can see here is that we then are presented with options for running further analysis on this subset. We can apply a tag to everything within this if we'd like. And we can get a basic idea of just looking more at the details of the content here. So as I talked about before, what we were looking at before was a particular project, which, like I said, is kind of, you could point it at just a single file share, you could point it at a subset of a file share. But of course, in most organizations, you're going to have multiple different file shares that you're going to be analyzing and want to keep tabs on. So you're going to wind up with multiple projects. So the search that we did within that one project might not be sufficient for all your e-discovery needs. We don't want to have to be repeating the same searches across all our different projects. So we've also provided this e-discovery ability across projects. You can do a cross-project search, select from any number of projects or select just from all of them, and do the same kind of advanced searches, content, and metadata all across all of your projects within your FAM module. So what do we do once we've actually searched or started filtering through? We're going to want to actually have things be tagged and classified so we can get further insights into it and start taking actions on our data here. Here's just a basic list of tags in an example project I've got here. Now you can see that there are some tags that are just going to be things like metadata-based tags or content-based, or we could even do pattern matching to define PII within our files and apply those tags automatically. And then we have these action tags. We can do things like decide that we want to, even though FAM is designed to be managing files in place, as we also offer an archive, we can choose to say if items meet certain criteria, go ahead and bring that into the archive. We might not want that sitting around in a file share where everyone can access it. Maybe we want to bring that in, and maybe we want to make a copy and have it in both places just so it's backed up and safe. We could also delete things, leave them alone, declare records, quarantine, move files. All of these things are possible with these actions. And we can choose to apply these either manually or even use automated tags that could automatically find things, perhaps things that have been tagged that have PII, and say we're going to need to move that into a more secure location just so we're covered in terms of privacy law or anything like that. These, of course, can be customized to each of your specific company's needs. If I look here at an example of some of the content tags that we might be able to generate. For one, this top example is a support tag, things might be related to support. And this is looking for basic keywords that tend to be related. So bug, patch, hotfix, exception, things like that. And this is going to, if it finds these in the content, it's going to go ahead and tag it as support. Pretty basic here, just looking for simple keywords. So without having anything too specific, you can kind of get into trouble of having too many tags applied that might not be relevant, which is why from our e-discovery module that, again, we developed years and years ago, we've ported over this advanced way of querying we call PQA to do more sophisticated kind of tagging. So we can actually use Boolean operators, wildcards, and proximity here to start getting a little more complicated and start making sure that we're getting more of the things that we want tagged to actually be tagged and less of the things that we don't. So just some examples here, we can look for the word index within 5 words of migration. Again, those could be whatever words you want or any length of proximity you want. We could add wildcards. We could look for phrases with wildcards. And we can combine these things with Boolean operators to get as complicated as we want. When I do a scan with my project with these tags configured, those tags are going to automatically be applied without me having to worry about it at all. But of course, as I just mentioned, auto tags can sometimes be trouble in terms of false positives if you're not too specific with your criteria. And so we do have human override, of course, as well as manual tagging capabilities. So here again is just an example of a search that I've done, looking for ZL in the name of a file and doing a content query for confidential. I found these 45 files, and I could go ahead and tag them as I'd like and override any tags that I feel the need to. Now, this is just another screenshot of our dashboard that I wanted to focus on a bit for you. So here you'll see that we have this breakdown below the high-level summary of just the number of files and folders and size. We have a breakdown of NIST data. We have a breakdown of duplicates, things that have been found to have PII, everything that's been indexed. You'll notice that that number is just a little bit smaller than the total number of files, and that's you'll find usually in a file share just due to either encrypted or corrupted files. Usually it's just a few different. We'll see how many things have been tagged, and then we'll also make distinct the number of things that have been tagged by users. So that with that manual tag, we'll see how many things had inherited tags that came with it from before. And we'll see the same with records for things that have been manually tagged as records and things that have inherited a records code. So let's focus a bit on the PII aspect here, because that's something that's really growing in importance as the GDPR comes to pass, and seems like pretty much every state and country is at least in talks of passing similar legislation. So covering yourself from any liability or any risk of severe fines or any kind of penalty in terms of privacy is something that I think most companies are seriously thinking about right now. So we can do this all in place, of course, by using our PII spec in terms of tags. So we can, what that lets us do is use regular expression patterns to look for any kind of pattern in an alphanumeric. We can combine that with context or negative context to help, again, rule out false positives. Some patterns are a bit more simple than others, like a phone number may have a lot of false positives if you just have it be that series of digits alone. But if we add some context and say it has to be using these trigger phrases or like things like phone, ring, mobile, cell, call, contact, all of those can help make sure that if we find that nearby a matching pattern for a phone number, that's going to be more promising of a genuine hit for PII than without having this kind of context. And on the other side, we might have a number of emails that we don't actually care about. They're not really personal, but maybe they're just for HR or support. So I can use this negative context expression to ignore some of those things that are just going to wind up being tags that I don't care about because it's not PII, and help make sure that emails that I do get are actually individual email addresses. This can go further, and we can get into like credit cards and even specific types of credit cards, like making a pattern for Visa. And again, we can use the PII context here to make sure that we're getting make sure that we're pairing it with things like debit, MasterCard, Visa, whatever, so that our pattern alone doesn't make a hit, but the pattern nearby, some reference of something related to payment, is going to make sure that we tag that. So looking again at our dashboard, you'll see this PII data indicator here that we can click on. If I do, I'll be shown all the items that have been tagged to a find PII. And this isn't the only way I can get to this PII analysis. This is going to be visible anytime I do the item view within FAM. But here I can focus in on just everything that does have PII. So if I do click on this PII analysis under actions, I'm going to be presented with the PII that's been found here. So I'll see the terms that have caused this to be tagged as a hit. And I can actually also view the region. So though we don't have a preview into the data itself, since it's not in our archive and it's managed in place, our index allows us to view the region to give a little more context about the hit. So here, if I click on that, I'll see highlighted the trigger pattern here, and I can get a better idea of whether or not this is something I need to actually worry about, if maybe this data needs to be remediated in any way, and maybe needs to be either deleted or anything like that. So this tagging can be a very powerful tool to make sure that your data is tagged appropriately, and you're not going to be maybe exporting things out for e-discovery that contain data that you can't be sharing or anything like that. Lastly, getting into action and remediation. Again, we have these action tags that we can use to apply different actions to our data. This can be done either automatically or manually. I can also create custom tags and actions. So if I want to create a certain, say, export tag, make sure that it copies over to a specific destination. It should be a certain file, folder, or anything like that. Some people get a bit weary, of course, about manual disposition tags, for example. They're a bit heavy-handed at times. People like to have more oversight into what's being deleted before it is deleted. So we can do both the manual record declaration to make sure that we're applying our records codes only to things that we actually want to. And we can also provide more permissions and oversight into deletion. So we have to do purge batches. So here's just an example of a search where I'm marking an item as a record. That'll pair with our records manager module. So I can look at our different records codes that I can choose from, where, say, HR offer letters are kept for 1 year, insurance claims are kept for 4, et cetera. This can be customized to whatever you need for your organization. Then looking again at our filtering here, I can look at retention and see what is deletable as of now. So if I click on that filter, this dashboard will rebuild and just show me things that are ready to be deleted according to our retention codes. So I can look through those items, make sure that they all look okay to me to actually be cleared up, and then I can request a purge. And this actually allows another workflow for approval of the purge. So if I don't have permissions, I can request it because I've done the check and it looks okay to me. And then another user with permissions could come in, look through as well, and go ahead after the request has been submitted and approve it. Before this, we also have reporting that we can generate for predisposition. We can look at purge reports after the fact to get some numbers on what all's been deleted. The predisposition report will give me a breakdown of everything that is in here it qualifies for deletion based on being expired. And I can also look at all the items that are records within all of my documents in this. I hope you enjoyed the quick overview, but the product goes much, much deeper than we were able to show in just this amount of time.
And thanks for breaking that down, Kevin. We really appreciate that. So let's get back to our books analogy. Again, a large pile of books and documents that continue to pile up until you clean it. After you clean it, it turns into another pile. The difference here, though, is using the system that we just talked about. You clean up that first time and you put it under continuous governance. So in effect, you're creating a library that makes sure all of the books are up to date and ready for use. Once you apply governance, you never really have to do a cleanup process ever again. Of course, the data is always ready, scrubbed for use, especially for analytics, e-discovery, and compliance purposes. Last thing I want to go over today is just a few of the sample use cases that we found can work using the same process that we discussed earlier. So again, besides using it for things like a cleanup project, you can use it pre-migration, use it to combat any issues that you have with privacy and legal. So just a number of things to think about if you're considering applying these same principles in the future. And that about wraps it up for our webinar today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us at info@zlti.com. Thank you very much, everyone. You have a great day.